Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ozoza Lifestyle Crucial Conversations podcast. We are very honored to have Desmond Ovbiagele, the director of the award-winning film, The MilkMaid, with us. Desmond has worked for over a decade in investment banking before exiting to pursue a passion for movie production. He wrote, produced, and directed his debut feature film, Render to Caesar, which was selected to screen in official competition at FESPACO, Africa's largest film festival, in 2015, as well as the Pan-African Film Festival in Los Angeles, and won several other awards at various film festivals. His latest film, The MilkMaid, which we'll be discussing this morning, is a film about a Fulani milkmaid and her sister who suffer the consequences of an insurgency in the northern part of Nigeria. The film has won several awards and accolades, including Best Film at the 2020 African Movie Awards, Best Makeup, Best Actress in a Supporting Role, and Best African Film. It was also the first Nigerian entry to the Oscars. Please join me in welcoming Desmond Ovbiagele. Welcome, Desmond.
Thank you very much, Aziza. Thank you very much.
It's really, really good to have you here. And I know we've wanted to have this crucial conversation for a long time. So I'm glad with COVID, all the delays, I'm really glad it's happened, you know?
That's right.
And I know a lot of our viewers are very excited to hear what you've got to say about your film and see the trailer of your film and hear your insights as well. So, I mean, Desmond, in the film, we see Aisha, a Fulani milkmaid, searching for her younger sister, Zainab. Dire personal circumstances force her to approach militants who were responsible for their separation in the first place, but she's determined to find her sister despite compromises she must make. So my first question to you is what motivated you to make this film?
Oh, well, thank you very much, Aziza. As you said, I had made a previous film and having taken a couple of years to recover from that experience, I was searching for the topic of my next film. What I did know was that I like to work on films that speak to topical issues in my immediate environment. And one of the issues that was certainly to the fore in Nigeria was the issue of insurgency, which had been raging on in the northern part of northeastern part of Nigeria for about 7 years or so. I had seen a picture of a suicide bomber, a young woman, shortly after she had detonated her vest, in one of the dailies online. I was absolutely horrified as to what would make this young woman with her whole world ahead of her, consent to this sort of action against herself and against humanity. And I wanted to explore, what led her to this sort of decision, through the medium of film.
Interesting. Absolutely fascinating. It's obviously it's a very topical issue. It's something we're all concerned about. The film is not currently out for official release, but let's take a look at the trailer together so that the viewers get an insight into the storyline and get an idea of the film.
In zan tuna, lura da Zainab shine manufana a rayuwa.
koya miki yanda ya kamata har ki ce da mu kin gode.
Na yanke shawarin zan aurar da wannan matan.
Ba za ki bi umarni na ba. Daga mi ita daga nan.
Idan ta mutu ma haka Allah ya so. Ki shirya kamar mace ta gari. Ina zuwa juma da dare.
Hakan ya tabbatar da cewa aikin mu mata ba kuka kawai da kula da gida idan mazan ba su.
Ya matarka
ta fita nema kamar kullum.
Muna iya bin hanyar zaman shahidai
Zamuje duk wurin da kuna so muje yanzu. Zamuyi duk abubuwa da kun so muyi.
Mu koma yadda muke da.
Ba za mu iya ba. Babu ma wanda zai iya.
Wow, it's really a spectacular film on many fronts. For me, what moved me particularly, I mean, it's a fairly lengthy film. Was the storyline is incredible, and also the cinematography. Where you set it and where you filmed it is amazing. The acting is amazing. I really like the fact that you actually shot it with in original language. You shot it in Hausa. Can you actually tell us what made you decide to do that, to shoot it in Hausa?
Oh, thank you. I mean, one of our overriding production objectives was to strive for as much authenticity as possible with the film. We really wanted to get it right. We felt the weight of responsibility that we were representing, whether we liked it or not, a segment of the Nigerian populace who was suffering, who have been severely impacted by the insurgency, but yet didn't have access to the sort of channels we had to be able to express their grievances and share their stories with the wider world. What we tended to receive through the media was a daily deluge of casualty statistics in terms of how many people had died. So we wanted to be able to tell their stories as accurately and as authentically as possible. That meant, not shooting in the southern part of the country, which would have been far more convenient logistically and resource-wise, but actually taking the production up, to the north. And then second to that, we also wanted to immerse people as much as possible in the experience of, try to understand and feel, not everything obviously, but at least a taste of what the actors in this theater of conflict go through in that part of the country. And it was a fairly natural decision to shoot it in Hausa, because that was obviously the most natural language for the actors in that setting to be communicating.
So looking at the process of that, I mean, that's a lot of work. So did you have to write the script first in English and then get it translated?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Wrote it in English. Obviously, well, not obviously, but I don't speak a word of Hausa. We also had some dialogue in Fulfulde and in Arabic as well. So needed to get a translator, to accurately, translate that, into those languages.
Yeah. What drove the choice of state? I understand you filmed in Taraba State in the northeast of Nigeria, which is beautiful. I mean, the landscape is actually absolutely stunning. So what drove that decision? Because that's very far from Lagos, where you're based. How did that come about?
Well, I'll just tee off on the word you just said. It is beautiful, and I simply, as a filmmaker, I couldn't resist it. I mean, I had planned to shoot in a different state, somewhere in the middle belt. I happened to see some pictures of Taraba State on the internet, and I absolutely refused to believe that was Nigeria, because I had never seen anywhere in Nigeria or heard of anywhere in Nigeria that actually looked that beautiful. Someone assured me that that was indeed in Nigeria, and I should go and take a look for myself. So I went up to Taraba State with my production designer, and we spent a week there, traversing the length and breadth of the state. And by the time we came back, we absolutely were certain that we had to shoot that film in Taraba State. And really, no film of any considerable magnitude had actually been shot in Taraba State before. So also there was the added incentive of sort of breaking boundaries and going where no one had actually gone before with film.
I mean, the film is stunning, and it's also, I mean, what I also liked about it is the characterization, the character development. Those characters seem very authentic, and that must have involved a lot of research. So how did that process go, and what stories that you heard touched you and helped you to also create some of those characters?
I mean, the MilkMaid, was based, just as you said, out of a lot of research. not being from the northern part of Nigeria myself, not speaking the language, I really needed to be sure that what we were portraying and presenting was something that was accurate. So did a lot of research. And the stories and the scenarios that you see playing out in the MilkMaid are based on the real accounts of actual survivors of the insurgency in Nigeria. And as you probably would imagine, in some cases, you actually had to tamper down exactly what they went through, because it would have been a bit too grueling and traumatic for, I think, a fun-loving cinema audience to swallow. So we sort of just try to arrive at the essence of what of the experiences that they undergo there.
So Desmond, one of the things that struck us was that Aisha and Zainab were two ladies who had gone through a lot of hardships, and their characters could have been portrayed as victims, yet they were portrayed as survivors and strong women who had their own ideas. And what chose you to portray them as such?
Well, again, it was the outcome of the research. I think one of the things that struck me the most, and one word kept coming to mind, and that word is resilience. I happened to speak to a couple of survivors who had made their way down from Maiduguri and had settled in some squatter camp across the Lekki Expressway in Lagos. And having spoken to them, I mean, what struck me in interacting with them was the fact that had you not heard the words coming out of their mouths, you would not have known that these people, just on mere visual sight, had undergone such traumatic experiences. But here they were, dislocated from their family, literally dislocated from their environment, in a strange land, being extorted by area boys and all that. But somehow they're still, trying to, eke out an existence to make the best of their circumstances. And I thought that was very, very powerful. These are people who have lost loved ones, who have lost friends, but somehow they keep going. And as I said, had you not heard what they were saying, you wouldn't be able to differentiate them from the average person on the street in Lagos.
Wow. So, no, absolutely. I mean, the other thing I struck me was about the humanity you brought to this, because one of the things we're aware of is that we read a lot of these things in newspapers, we see it on the news, and it's an incident, it's shocking, it's horrifying, but we never really hear the people who are affected. It's like you were giving a voice to the voiceless, and you were really. And can you talk to us a bit about that?
Well, I think that was certainly a large part of my motivation personally as a filmmaker. As I mentioned earlier, all I was encountering from my base in Lagos was just daily statistics of how many people had died. But I think what struck me was that if this same event was happening in the Western world, we know how much blanket coverage there will be of each and every victim, their background, their stories, their friends, their families, their hopes and their dreams. And I was struck by, why aren't our people entitled to the same amount of coverage? We just don't have that as a value in our social system here in Nigeria. And I certainly wanted, in a little way, through the film, to try and contribute to changing that.
Now, basically, there's some of the participants on this webinar. We've got some really guests that have really honored us with their time. One of them is Dr. Fatima Akilu, who is the executive director of the Neem Foundation, and is a trained psychologist with over 20 years of experience in the field of mental health, psychology, and prevention of violent extremism. I'd like her to speak to us about a couple of things, to have her input here. Can you tell us, Dr. Fati, about some of the initiatives that the Neem Foundation is doing on the ground to support victims of violent extremism?
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to really congratulate you, Desmond. Important, I think, that we raise victims' voices. We've been working in this field for a number of years now, and I think when you look at what's going on in terms of insecurity in the country, there is so much emphasis on the perpetrators, including how they are engaged, whether it's militarily or how they are rehabilitated. And there is not much attention really that's directed at the victims, and yet they bear the brunt of this conflict. So I think highlighting it and telling the story through these young girls is very, very powerful. As you said, they are hope and resilience and strength. which is what we see in a lot of the victims that we work with. So I just wanted to really say how important this film is in terms of broadening our collective understanding of what people go through when there's conflict, and also to galvanize attention, not just in Nigeria, but hopefully globally, to the plight of victims. So thank you so much for bringing this into this space. As to what Neem does, we work in, you're welcome, practically in most states in northern Nigeria, but also in the Sahel and as far afield as Syria and Lebanon. The kind of work that we do is really looking at a holistic response to violent extremism using non-military means. So it's the opposite of what the military does. We look at things that look at the gaps that cause violence to persist in our communities. A lot of it has to do with lack of governance, issues to do with lack of provision of basic amenities, education, pathways to self-actualization for youth, but also a lot of wrong-headed, probably misguided or mischievous religious preaching that also foments this culture within communities where people with not much religious education, probably not much critical thinking, are manipulated by these charismatic preachers. But that's only one aspect of it. The maybe more fundamentally is, what do we do when we have a population of millions and millions of youth that really have no opportunity? And I don't really mean just opportunity in terms of education, but it's a big one. Opportunity in terms of skill, opportunity in terms of how to express themselves. I think people probably don't realize that more and more, if you work across multiple communities that we have, there is not much access to simple things like sports. Like music, like culture, like arts. You have now in many states religious zealots that tell you that these things are un-Islamic. So how does a young person now express himself as he's transitioned to adulthood? So what we try to do is we try to design programs that address all of those things. Looking at trauma, we have a big trauma component. We look at education, but when we look at education, we look beyond training. We also look at how do you imbibe critical thinking, how do you imbibe values? We live in such a polarized society now. How do you bring people of opposing views, opposing ethnicities, opposing religions together to think of themselves as Nigerians? We also use sports. We do peace through sports. We do a lot of negotiation, dialogue with communities, because part of the work that we do is, for example, Desmond is in your film, those young girls, is how do we get them to coexist side by side, for example, with the perpetrators of the conflict within their environment. Because really, we can't have a divided society and we can't lock up perpetrators indefinitely, even though the most extreme should account for the work that they did. But there are many low-level offenders that can be successfully rehabilitated in the community. So this is part of the work that we do, but I don't want to take away too much from you and your film. So I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that contribution, and very well done for the work you're doing. I'd certainly like to know more about what you're doing in your organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fati. I'll definitely be putting you in touch, Desmond and Fati. I think there could be a very interesting collaboration there. Desmond, on one of the points that Dr. Fati raised was another point I want to bring up about the film, which some people felt, should that have happened, shouldn't it? I won't give too much away, but there was a situation in which one of the, you know what I'm going to say, I can see you smiling, in which one of the captives falls in love with, with Aisha. And this is a phenomenon. This is like the Stockholm syndrome, you know. What would you say about that? I mean, why did you feel the need to write that into the story?
Well, it was totally a product of research. I mean, this was part of the accounts of the survivors, which is, you know, and I found it very fascinating in terms of the research that, you know, as you said, the perpetrators, a lot of them, you know, as opposed to armed robbers who sort of, to some extent, chose their path. Many of them, the perpetrators in the insurgencies themselves started out as victims and now, you know, became perpetrators somewhere along the spectrum. So that element of humanity, that element of normalcy as human beings still remains in them. And having abducted these girls, these young women, you know, there was an effort on the part of certainly some of them to try and appeal to them beyond the basis of force in terms of trying to win them over, not just to their ideology, but also to form, you know, these personal relationships on a romantic side with them. There were stories about them, you know, buying them gifts, expensive gifts, whether it be food or jewelry and things like that, but really trying to ingratiate themselves with these women, you know. And I think that actually makes the ideology even more seductive or more persuasive, because you're not dealing with monsters here, you're dealing with people who clearly are portraying themselves as human beings like you, but of a supposedly superior ideology.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. I mean, at this point, I think it's a good point in which to bring in Nuruddeen Lemu, who's the director of research and training at the Dawah Institute and the Islamic Educational Trust. He trains religious and community leaders in responding to the recruitment narratives of violent extremists and providing youth with realistic alternatives to violence when dealing with grievances. I'd like to welcome you, Nuruddeen. There's some questions that I'll definitely, like Adeline's question, which is to what extent does religion have to do with this? I definitely will be directing that to yourself, but welcome Nuruddeen, thank you for joining us. I will think my first question is what would you say are some of the root causes of this? Some could say it's an insurgency, but there's a religious extremist element to some of it as well. So what would you say are some of the root causes based on the work you do on the ground?
Firstly, good morning and afternoon for some. I'd like to start by congratulating Desmond actually on the movie. I've heard about it from Aziza and seen the trailer. We definitely need talent in this area. You know, I think it fills an important piece of a really big puzzle. Problems like violent extremism and the problem surrounding Boko Haram looks very simple, straightforward from a distance. And the closer you get, the more research, the more complex it appears. And so a number of things that I think Desmond touched on, looking at from the perspective of the violent extremist. The violent extremist, you would say, from a sympathizer, is really a saint that has gone wild. Somebody who, when you listen to their grievances, while we may disagree with their methods of addressing those grievances, they're complaining about immorality, corruption, what we would call structural injustice within the system, alienation, you know. And so when you ask the question, what's the cause of this? Sometimes I find it useful to explain it as being similar like potholes on the road. Potholes are everywhere, but they're caused by various things. They do similar damage, but some are caused by heavy vehicles, others it's poor workmanship, others it's the underlying soil, in some places it's excessive heat, another place it's frost, different diverse causes to the extent that it's difficult to actually say one cause. You'd have to look at it case by case. On the religious side, as Dr. Akilu rightly said, if you look at it from the point of view of orthodoxy, mainstream views the ideology of violent extremism as opportunistic. It's like a chameleon. It's like a fake dollar bill. If you don't know enough about what a genuine dollar bill, then it's easy, what it looks like, it's easy to go in for a fake. And unfortunately, you've got these very charismatic leaders who know how to whip the ideology that binds them with grievances, and they make themselves as victims. And as Desmond says, some of them were victims and maybe in a way are victims, but unfortunately have become serious oppressors. So many causes, many solutions. Difficult question to answer, Aziza.
Oh. Desmond, would you like to come in there?
No, I mean, I can't add or subtract to what Dr. said. He's absolutely right. I mean, it's one of the things that struck me about the research that I did, and particularly in terms of the perpetrators. And we could have gone a different, I guess, direction, with the film. We could have made it more of an action film, put a lot of explosions and gunplay and all that, brought in more of the, security agency side and all that. But, we wanted to keep the focus, very much on the victims. And as just been said, the perpetrators themselves are also victims. In a way, they may hold the guns, they may hold the powers of and leverages of oppression and all that, but at the end of the day, even from the daily reports we're seeing in the papers about the latest developments going on, with the various groups, we see them themselves becoming victims at the end of the day. So really, it's really a no-win situation, for the people involved, particularly on the perpetrator side.
Yeah, one of the questions I had for Nuruddeen was, what are you doing on the ground? Because you're coming across, Nuruddeen, these individuals who have been radicalized, and what initiatives do you have running on the ground to actually deal with this issue? What measures are being taken to sort of de-radicalize and rehabilitate?
I think that's more Dr. Fatima Akilu. After you get them and they are to be rehabilitated, what's the process? What the organization I work with focuses on is capacity building of religious leaders to understand, empathize with the grievances, understand where these people are coming from, to also get youth to be listened to, so that you don't get further recruitment just because the youth feel nobody is listening to us and somebody is actually doing something. So we get the grievances and we start to analyze realistic alternatives to violence. All you need to do is just show a lot of these young people what the collateral damage has been. So whatever the good intentions might have been for violent extremism, when you look at the IDP camps, when you look at the villages that have been attacked, look at the lives, whatever good you were thinking of bringing in, you've really created more harm than benefit. And so while they still have grievances, they still view themselves as victims. The need to explore realistic alternatives to violence when it comes to dealing with grievances, but the need to also understand the basics of what religion is for, not just what it's against. Religion is against injustice. Religion is against, all sorts of misbehavior that tends to create a liberation theology in the minds of extremists, actually in many. But this question of understanding religion enough to ensure that it is not hijacked for objectives that are contrary to the clear dictates of the religion. So really it's to encourage more people. The religious community leaders are the ones who at the end of the day you leave with the community. They are the ones who every day after projects are over, you leave them behind. They are the marital counselors, they are the premarital counselors, they are the conflict mediators. So what we try to do is build their capacity to do their jobs better, to identify extremism, to counter it, and to also realize that sometimes violent extremism comes because there's a stagnancy in the orthodoxy. When mainstream religious leaders are not involved in caring for the poor, solving real problems, then a splinter group comes out and looks at themselves as the messiahs, the promised ones, the ones who will cleanse society. We may call them Puritans. So there's, few are guilty, but I think we all have responsibilities when it comes to solving this problem from a holistic perspective, and hence the role of the media in giving people a more humane picture of what's going on, and allowing people to actually not just demonize others and end up being what they're against. Thank you
very much, Nuruddeen. That actually leads me on to what Nuruddeen was saying, leads me on to want to ask Desmond a question with regards to what your choice of doing a film rather than a documentary, because you could have just done a documentary, covering all the, these issues. But so can you just tell me that strategic choice to do a film, how did you feel? Did you feel that would impact the audience more than a documentary would?
Oh, well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, it's a great question. And there have been a number of documentaries already done on the insurgency crisis, both by local producers, as well as by several international organizations, in the US and other parts of the Western world. What there had been was a paucity of material, of content, particularly in the filmmaking industry, both local and foreign, addressing what was going on in Nigeria. And as a filmmaker in Nigeria, I could understand that. I mean, this sort of subject matter is difficult to read about, is difficult, to watch, and things are already hard enough in the country as it is. People want to go on with their lives and hear about things that can sort of, escapist sort of, content, basically. But the reality is that you can't escape this. If you don't want to see it in the cinema, you will read it in the newspapers, you're going to watch it on television, you're going to hear it on the radio, basically. We've been in this situation, for the last well over a decade right now, and adopting a strategy of trying to escape from the problem is not going to solve it. So I certainly felt that, the medium of film would hopefully and probably give the topic and the subject matter more access to a broader audience than just a documentary, which doesn't tend to be shown in cinemas on several TV stations and network cable network providers as well.
I completely agree. I also think that with film, you're somehow able to empathize more, because you really go into your mind switches into, you go into the shoes of the character. You are walking with them through the fields of Taraba State. You are with them and you're thinking, my goodness, it's very powerful. I mean, it's you're Alice in Wonderland. You are Alice, and so you really, I mean, me reading about it in newspaper and watching your film has changed everything and made everything seem more urgent, and people have to really, support, a lot of NGOs support filmmakers, and do more, because you see how random it is and how it could be anybody in any community, and how people are suffering. The empathy element is so much stronger in a film. So it's very, very effective. It would be good to know when it's going to be out on official release. Is there any information on that?
Well, we're currently in negotiations with a couple of options in terms of exhibition and making it available, primarily streaming platforms. So those are ongoing. We're just trying to, sort of dot the I's and cross the T's on that. But hopefully, this being end of October, we're really trying to target by the end of the year the film being available on one platform or the other. But we'll certainly keep those who are interested posted on that.
And how did it feel to be the first entry for the Oscars, first Nigerian film to be first Nigerian entry for the Oscars? How did that feel?
Oh, it was a tremendous honor. I mean, you're representing a nation of 200 million people with several, vibrant filmmakers, many of them, in the industry way before I was. But, we were just very glad, that platform was provided, through the nomination and selection for the Oscars for the topic, to move out of, it just being another Nigerian film, but for it to actually attract, some level of attention, through the media, both local and international, because, clearly from our perspective, we believe the stories of the people involved deserve that sort of attention. Part of the motivation for making the film was obviously the outcry, the international outcry in 2014 with the kidnapping of the Chibok girls. But about post that, a sort of global attention on insurgency in Nigeria seemed to have died down. It had come on in spurts and sporadically, but basically there was no sustained momentum to resolving the situation and finding a solution, both to ending the crisis as well as providing relief and rehabilitation for the victims. So we were hoping that in our little way, the film could help to sort of retrain attention on the issues involved in this crisis.
Absolutely. I mean, on that point, I'd quite like to bring in Habiba Balogun, who's a behavioral scientist and also a coordinator of the Bring Back Our Girls initiative in Lagos. And Mrs. Balogun, can you just talk us through what the Bring Back Our Girls initiative has been going through over the last few years and where we are, and if there are any government initiatives, etc. We'd love to hear your insights.
Yeah, I'd like to add my voice to say a big thank you to Desmond. My God, Desmond, I'm now one of the greatest fans.
Thank you very much.
But just watching the trailer and being able to link, what I saw in the trailer to what I hear from the girls, from the Chibok girls who have been recovered, from their parents, we're in touch with their moms, with their dads, with their community members. It's very, very emotional, kind of a bit traumatic, when you're working in this field. And that's why I admire people like Dr. Fati Akilu, everybody at Neem Foundation, what Sheikh Nuruddeen, Lemu, and the people at the Dawah Center are doing. When you're working with people, who are traumatized, who have family members, friends, children, who have experienced all of this, it can be very difficult. You really need to look after your own mental health as you're going through all of this. But yeah, Bring Back Our Girls, it's over 7 years. Like everybody else, these are girls, we saw vulnerable girls in school, in government custody, kidnapped. And no kidnapping is good, but this one you're kidnapped by violent extremists with the war technology in our opinion. And we, my God, my children went to boarding school. If my children, would I sit back? And that was what made me and so many other people, men and women, get up and say, no, we have to take this government. This is something new, something terrible that's starting. If it isn't nipped in the bud, if they don't address, it's going to become worse. It will be copycats. And here we are, 2021. Here we had more kidnapping than ever before. And they've continued in 2021. So that's very, very demoralizing. But what I can say is, for the Chibok girls, 276 were kidnapped. 57 managed to escape through their own agency. 219 went into that captivity that you have demonstrated in your movie, very realistically. And we've managed to recover 110 of those girls are back reunited with their families, back in school. Many have graduated just last year and this year. Many graduated. They're pursuing careers, lawyers, nurses, doctors. Some of them even have more, greater ambitions than that. We still have 109 girls unaccounted for, and we know some of them are alive. A group of 7 contacted their father earlier this year in 2021. A Good Samaritan gave them access to a phone. So they were able to, one of them was able to speak to her father and said she had 6 of her classmates still with her, and they are still struggling to come home. So, you have a lot of Nigerians saying, 7 years on, are you still crying for these people? Are you still expecting them to come back? If it was your child, if it was your sister, your brother, your auntie, yes, you would be crying for them and waiting for them to come back. And they're not on holiday. Even if, you do have situations like you depicted in your movie where they have formed connections, they have formed relationships. 7 years, I would imagine after 1 year, you would find a good or kind or relatively good or kind person who would make you feel safe and secure and provide access to resources. You make a life, that is your life. It's been their life for 7 years. But it doesn't mean that they don't still want to be reunited with their families. It doesn't mean that they don't still want to have control over their lives and over their future. So we're still fighting, we're still demanding that the government and any other agency that can help to bring those girls back. And we're there to rally whatever resources we can to support them, support their community, and not just the Chibok community. Dr. Fati Akilu said they're working all over the north. They're even working in Syria, and I think she said Iraq. There are many communities, many women, many young men who were conscripted, as you said. They were forced into the insurgency and have become fighters themselves, who are living a life they don't want to live and are looking for a way out. So we need all the actors to get on board. the religious leaders to be educated so that they know how to respond, they know how to guide, they know how to provide support and succor. We need everybody on board. And we will play our own role, which is to advocate and to pressure the government at all levels. We do it at the national level. I'm in Lagos State, I'm a coordinator for Lagos State. At Lagos State, we work with the state government to secure schools, safe schools initiatives, they've gotten security for schools, and many other issues like this. So you don't have to only be at the federal level. In your small community, what is the issue around safety, especially for the girl child? For all children, yeah, definitely, but the girl child is even more vulnerable, and about access to education and safe schools. So thank you very, very much. I look forward to watching the movie, and I'm going to spread the word, far and wide. More people need to understand exactly what's going on, and I think you've done that. There have been documentaries. I've spoken to some of the people who put them together. There's nothing like film to make it real for you to really empathize and put yourself in the shoes of the protagonist. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Habiba. I really appreciate your comments. Also really appreciate your work. And I'd certainly like to take this conversation beyond this podcast to see how we can collaborate, in terms of, getting the word out there and providing some, meaningful and sustainable change in terms of, the situation with respect to that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It'd be wonderful to see, collaborations happening. So I suppose that is one of the powers of film, is communication. It impacts the heart, and hopefully people start thinking and talking, and then really positive initiatives that can be beneficial to, the communities hopefully come out of it through people, getting in touch and discussing and having more conversations thereafter. I just want to know a little bit more about the recruiting the actors process. I mean, how easy or difficult was that? Because you had fantastic actors. I think everybody agreed just from seeing the trailer how brilliant they were.
Well, thank you very much, and a very timely question, because I thought I just saw our lead actress pop up on the participants. Anthonieta, if you're there, could you please raise your hand? There she is.
I unmute her, or do you want to say a few words first?
Please unmute her. Let her. She can speak for almost answer our questions to a certain extent, actually.
I'm just pressing unmute to see. Hi, Anthonieta. It's great to see you. Are you unmuted?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm in transit. I just thought to catch the meeting.
Oh, Anthonieta, thank you so much for joining us. I completely, and I'm sure others. I mean, I've watched the whole film. Others have watched the trailers. And we're hoping that everybody gets to watch the whole film soon. Your performance was fantastic.
Thank you. I'm really honored.
Can you tell us a bit about how difficult it was or easy to get into the character? How much preparation it took, or how challenging it was to get into the character, and what that process was like?
Preparation. Sorry, just to inform you, I'm in transit, so my network might fluctuate while I speak.
Okay.
Okay, so for preparations, yes, it wasn't something I had done before, in as much as I'd been involved in development work that had to do with girls and communities like that, but actually playing or trying, because I always say it's an attempt to put myself in their shoes. It was really tasking because, for one, the mindset and having to put yourself in the place of the character Aisha was sad almost all through the movie, really. She only had very few bits where she had some sort of excitement or was elated about something. So it was very sad feel overall. And so being in that place, trying to put yourself, I had to do research, like watch documentaries. Director Desmond also sent me materials. I think they were materials to read about girls who had gone through, who had returned, their testimonies about what happened to them. So there was that. And then there was trying to, because it's one thing as an actor to portray a particular character, to feel emotions in your first language, which for me is like the English language. But then again, trying to internalize that and then portray it in a different language. So there was that. But in all, it's a very beautiful experience, and I don't think Aisha is a character I'll forget anytime soon.
Wow, that's amazing, actually. So Hausa is your second language, is it?
Yes, I would say so, because I grew up in Zaria, which is northern Nigeria. So after English language, I just naturally picked up the Hausa language.
Yeah. Well, it was a very, very stunning performance. It was really amazing. So congratulations, and we look forward to seeing more amazing work from you. I think, Desmond, I think what I want to ask you is what message do you want viewers to take from this film?
Well, I'd like viewers to understand and appreciate the lives of the people who live in these places in Nigeria, to understand their culture a bit better, to be able to identify with them more beyond just reading about them in the papers. And it's not just only about insurgency. I think it's just about our connections as human beings in Nigeria. You know, we tend to move in, stratified, groups of society and not really have any empathy really for the other groups. We can be quite fragmented as a country, so I really wanted to create a film that everybody, irrespective of tribe or religion, can identify with, just as, to contribute towards a sort of unifying force for the country. You should be able to care deeply about someone who doesn't live anywhere near you and doesn't have anywhere of the sort of background that you have, but just because that person is Nigerian or a human being, you should be able to be motivated to go beyond your comfort zone to help, assist, and reach out on behalf of that person. I'm hoping the film in some way can at least contribute towards that.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely hope so too. I mean, you kind of wonder why one has to remind people that everyone is a human being and hurts and feels, and you need to help where you can and do what you can. You kind of wonder why there seems to be a diminishing of that sense of humanity and community. You wonder where that is coming from, this fragmentation, and you want to sort of track the roots of that. You wonder where that is coming from, And do you have any advice for other filmmakers in Nigeria and Africa, and what they're doing right now? And do you have any advice or suggestions, or what would you like to see more of in the film industry, seeing as it's so powerful? It is the main means of in terms of communicating messages now, especially with the youth. I mean, it's a very powerful engine. What message do you have for filmmakers at the moment?
Well, I like us as filmmakers to appreciate the tools and the weapons we have at our disposal to make a positive and concrete change in society. I know it's good to make, comedies and romance and all that, and of course, they certainly have their place. But, in addition to that, we do have a responsibility, because we do have access to present stories and situations in a way that other professions cannot. And I think we need to be aware of that responsibility, aware of that potential influence that we have, and use it, to intervene to some extent. We're not talking about, hammering people over the head with messages. People might shy away from that in terms of paying money for that. But you can find a way to blend entertainment with education and awareness, in such a way that, it's a win-win situation, for you as a filmmaker, as well as those who are supporting you financially.
Yeah, thank you so much. Desmond, it's been a real pleasure to have you. What's next on your agenda?
Well, there are a number of, thank you. I mean, I do have a number of other projects. There are some iterations of the MilkMaid story we're trying to get out. We're contemplating a TV series, a limited series, to try and potentially, expand on some of the themes and characterizations and background stories we couldn't quite capture within the constraints of a feature film running time. So that is certainly on the table as well. We're also looking at a potential documentary as well, which sort of is seeking to sort of explore, the lives of those Chibok girls who did cross over from Nigeria to the United States, to try and find out how they're doing and whether all is totally well in paradise over there, or are they still, to some extent, experiencing, some difficulty in terms of adjusting to the new situation in which they find themselves. So just in short, sort of a follow-on story in terms of, both with the Chibok girls who crossed over, as well as Habiba said, those who are still left behind, some still in captivity, and trying to find out, what's happening to them, what efforts are being made to sort of get them out of that captivity situation.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. It's really been a real pleasure. We've enjoyed so much. We've learned so much. I really want to thank you very much, and Anthonieta, also some of your crew who tuned in. I thank you very much for actually just making this film. Because
thank you.
yeah, it would have been a lot of work, and it's much easier maybe commercially to make other types of feel-good Hollywood, Nollywood film. And one of the guests, Andine Razak, was saying, thank you for not going the Hollywood trajectory and making a really deep, nuanced film. Andine, that's a really valid point. Thank you. Mamle Kabu, who's a developmental consultant, has also mentioned a similar point. So we really benefited from it. We hope we continue working in this field, and we hope that other initiatives and collaborations with all the various amazing people on the ground also bear fruits. Obviously, Mrs. Balogun, Bring Back Our Girls, that'd be great. Nuruddeen, Lemu doing amazing work with the Dawah Institute. Dr. Fati Akilu also doing amazing work with the therapy and the drama and the psychological support they provide, and sports and the schools they're trying to set up to really create trying to create communities again where people feel whole and can self-actualize, and wholesome alternatives, essentially, because you feel like because there's a void, people are going down these dark cracks in a sense, and you think it wasn't like that in the past. We need to really look at how it got there and how to get back to a wholesome place. So I'd really like to thank you very much from my heart. If people want to keep following you to see where your film is, they should check Danone Media, right? I think we've posted the link.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
So we could be posting updates on our social media as well as on the Danone Media website as well.
Yeah, so the Danone Media, we're going to be checking that out and keeping track. So please let us know, and we very much hope to see more of your work. We hope to see more of your work because it's been really amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aziz. I really appreciate this forum and this platform. You've done a great job, and look forward to other podcasts like this in the future. Thank you very much.